have very popular opinions, so if you're offended easily, you might want to skip this video. Also, there's probably not going to be any fish in this video. It's probably just going to talk about safety. I'm just going to be honest, I'm not a fan of when people take advantage of a situation and like put clickbaity stuff out. You could easily accuse me of that right now with what's going on with the young man who is MIA currently. But I wanted to do something like this when it got cold. It just really hasn't been sustained cold long enough. And the few times I did go out, it just slipped my mind to talk about it. I'm not going to say your cliche safety things like wear warm clothing. I'm not going to give you any kind of like insulation layer amounts or anything like that. I'm going to give you other safety things that people generally don't either agree with or think of. And the very first thing I'm going to say is nobody determines safety other than you. Period. End of story. And what I mean by that is I'll tell you what I don't mean first. What I don't mean by that is 25-degree day, Ohio River's flowing at 33 degrees, and you're Mr. Macho and you think it's safe, so you take your very first kayaking trip ever on the Ohio River in 33-degree water and 25-degree temperatures. That's not what I mean by you choose your own safety. What I mean is don't give in to peer pressure. Do your research, ask people around what they do, and do what you feel comfortable with, period. When I was first starting my third trip out, my kayak flipped. It was a crappy brand kayak. There was a hole in the hull of the kayak that I was unaware of. Not even 5 minutes into the trip, 30-some degree day, 30-some degree water, filled with water, flipped me. And I wasn't even being a tough guy. I wasn't like trying, it's not like I noticed the kayak felt weird and I was trying to tough it out. Within 5 minutes, that thing flipped. But yeah, I got a little gun shy after that. I got my next kayak. I mainly did lakes. And then the locals around here, a lot of them were like, you know, you're not going to catch anything in those lakes. And I'm like, whatever. I listened to them, but I was like, whatever. I was like, I'm not going to do what I don't feel comfortable with. Lakes don't have current. It's 10 times easier to fish in a lake than it is a river. And then I started working on the Little Miami. But, tell me I got a hit. And then I started doing a Little Miami, but I would paddle to bank spots. I wouldn't typically fish out of my kayak. At first, I got used to the river by paddling to a bank spot, fish from the bank. And then someone told me like, hey, those guys you're competing with, they would respect you more if you were out in the river fishing. And I was just like, don't care. That's not what I'm comfortable with yet. I'm comfortable right now in my kayak going to a bank spot and fishing from the bank. I don't care what the people in the scene are comfortable with. If they don't want me fishing from the bank, they can get together and make a group vote and change the rules. So, and then I upgraded to Little Miami. I anchored a little bit. And then I started dragging and drifting, and then I got a bigger kayak, and I did, you know, once I felt comfortable in the Little Miami, I upgraded to the Ohio River in the smaller kayak, and now I'm in a bigger kayak. My strong suggestion is I'm in the Jackson U-Pick. Now that I've been out here in the Flint and the U-Pick, my strong suggestion is this is the minimum you really should be in the Ohio River. You know, some people might say, I'm in this tiny whatever kayak and I feel completely safe. Good for you. That's just not my advice. My advice is look at the specs of this U-Pick. No matter what company you go with, my advice is this should be the minimum standard to go out on a river such as the Ohio River. It's just fact we have a lot harder conditions to deal with than the majority of the country who does this. You know, more south. Like I'm in current right now that is considered fast current for them, and it's nothing for us. Like it's really nothing for us. So yeah, my first tip on safety is you determine your own safety, period. Don't succumb to peer pressure. If someone tells you that you are okay doing something, and if you don't feel comfortable doing it, don't do it. Don't listen to anyone but yourself when it comes to your safety. Period. End of story. I don't care who this offends. I don't care if someone's like, oh, you're just a scaredy cat or you're a baby. I don't care. Don't do what you don't feel comfortable doing ever. The next thing I'm going to say, and this is going to apply to some people, not all. Some people might say, if I apply this rule, I couldn't go fishing. So this is more of opinion. What I just said prior to this is, in my opinion, more of a factual statement. It's a fact that no one determines your safety other than you. This is more of an opinion statement. I personally do not fish anywhere that I do not think that I have the physical capability to get back to my vehicle without the kayak. So if my kayak flipped right now and I could not get back onto it, I could not get to it, like let's say the anchor somehow uplifted and the kayak started going down the river, I am 100% confident with my physical abilities, even in 38-degree water, I can get to that bank and get to my Jeep. 100% confident. There is no doubt on the only way I couldn't do that is if I got hit in the head. And I became unconscious, and that's a whole nother argument about, flotation, safety, etc. But everything we do has risk. You don't play football without risk of dying. You don't kayak fish without risk of dying. You don't play baseball without risk of dying. You don't do sports without risk of dying. Our percentage is just, unfortunately, a lot higher. So, yeah, I do not go fishing anywhere. I am not 100% certain I cannot get back to my Jeep if I flip. Next, I'm going to call it a myth because I think some people just say things to scare people sometimes. And this is where people are going to really, really disagree with me. I believe hypothermia and shock, not I believe, it's actually fact that shock is more up here than it is anywhere else. But hypothermia and shock, if I tipped over, and I'm going to give you a real life example, if I tipped over right now, I would be more pissed off than scared, because in my brain I'm going to tell myself I'm okay, the bank's right there, I'm going to swim horizontally. That's a quick tip. If you ever tip, don't swim against the current ever. Just swim towards the bank. Let the current take you. There's no amount of bank you cannot make up once you get to the bank. You can always walk back up to where you have to be. But if you ever tip, like if I tipped right now, I would be swimming directly to the bank. I would let the current push me down, but I'd be swimming directly to the bank. But what I was saying was, you got to be confident. If you flip, don't panic. It's easier said than done, but don't panic. And I'm going to give you a real life example here in a second. The more you panic, the quicker shock and hypothermia is going to set in. If you're confident and you know you're going to be okay and you just work to get to the bank, you are more than likely going to be fine. If you start flailing and crying and throwing a hissy fit, you probably shouldn't be out here. You probably really shouldn't be out here. If you cannot muster up enough courage to get to the bank without being scared, you should not be out on the water, period. That's an opinion that might offend some people. If you're not a good swimmer, you shouldn't be out here. You should not. This is for when you pass out. This isn't to help you swim. This is in case you pass out. If you can't get to the bank, if you don't think you can get to the bank without the assistance of one of these, you should not be out there. And that's another hard opinion of mine. But it's just, when you're out here, you are not just affecting yourself. And I'm gonna skip the cliche. You're affecting your family, your loved ones, etc. Of course, you're affecting all those people, but you're also affecting everyone else in this sport. All it takes is a handful more kayakers that go missing and or pass away, to where the government's going to be like, look, the risk to reward ratio is too high. We're going to start putting more regulations on that sport. So always keep in the back of your mind, you're not just representing you, you're representing the sport as a whole. And if something were to happen to you, the trickle-down effect, and it sounds, I know this sounds extremely selfish, but the trickle-down effect of you getting injured, hurt, costing the government money if you flip and they got to come get you and save you, isn't just you and your immediate family, it's everyone in the sport. There's more people who are going to be negatively affected outside of your immediate family and loved ones if you go and get hurt and or injured kayaking. It's, you know, all it takes is a few more of us, you know, to unfortunately pass away or get hurt. You know, this is going to sound dumb and people are going to get mad that I say this, but I don't care. The more money we cost the government, the quicker they're going to shut us down. Period. That's just how it works. So keep that in mind when you're out here. Remember, the trickle-down effect isn't just going to be you and your immediate family. And the last thing I want to say is, when you're going fishing in the cold, be prepared. But what I mean by that is, I don't mean pre-prepared like your clothing, etc. Like I said, you can research that on your own. Go figure out what you're comfortable wearing. Go figure out what helps you float, sink, etc. What I mean by be prepared is, your hands can't be exposed to the elements for too long. Your bare skin can't. It's really hard to tie hooks and leaders, etc. Try and prepare as much as humanly possible before you leave the house when you're warm. So for example, today, it's winter. I know I'm casting. I knew I wasn't going to be suspending. I knew there was a chance that there might have been a little bit of wind and it might have been choppy. So I knew there was a good chance I wouldn't be suspending baits, and I knew I would be casting with my baits. So right now, with the current in the time of year, there's more debris flowing than normal, so I know I have to be using a Sandy Cooper rig. Before I left my house, I rigged up all my lines with Sandy Cooper rigs, and I have 2 Sandy Cooper rigs between my legs if I get hung up, and I have extra weights in case I get hung up. That way I can minimize the amount of time that my hands are exposed to the elements. Be prepared, and less is more. You know, I'm essentially bare minimum to be able to do what I want to do effectively. I have my anchor, my bump board, my fish finder, my paddles. I have a drift sock if I need it, my bait, and my poles. That's it. I don't have anything else. So those are some tips to hopefully help you be safe. They're not your cliche tips. They're not, you know, wear warm boots, wear warm clothes, bring a lifetime's worth of food and etc. They're not your cliche tips, but I think those tips, especially new guys, I think those tips can help new guys.